is NDTV and you are watching NDTV Prime.
Salarpuria Sattva. Trust, it's what we build. Presents the Realty Debate powered by Reliance Home Finance with Manisha Natarajan.
Welcome to the Realty Debate. Today our focus is on Delhi's land pooling policy and the politics behind it, which has simply stalled any progress on the construction of 25 lakh budget and affordable homes in the capital city and Delhi state. While the Urban Development Ministry or the central government has approved the policy last year, the Delhi government, led by Aam Aadmi Party or AAP, is refusing to give its go-ahead. So let's dissect the arguments on both sides and you decide which party is holding Delhi's potential to create homes under 50 lakh rupee budget to ransom. Joining me today is Ramesh Bidhuri, MP Lok Sabha and member BJP South Delhi. Also with us, Kamal A. Mitra Shenoy, Professor Indian Politics, JNU and member AAP. Ex-member. Okay. You've left AAP, sir?
Well, I just drifted away.
You drifted away, but at least you know what's the politics behind land pooling policy from AAP's perspective. A.K. Jain, architect and town planner and former commissioner of planning DDA, an extremely important voice on today's debate, and also Prashant Solomon, MD Chintals India and treasurer CREDAI NCR. Of course, the man who knows this subject matter inside out, Ramesh Menon, director Certis Realty Limited, and also a land expert. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. Before I get into a deep dive into the debate, for our viewers' sake, let's go through the brief timeline of Delhi land pooling policy. We could actually call it DLPP, just to keep it short. Now, DLPP was framed and notified by Urban Development Ministry in 2013. So really, it was the Congress government under which it was first conceived. This was done to undertake large-scale acquisition of continuous land. Some of it was farmland or most of it was farmland with the owner's consent. Earlier, DDA used to acquire large chunks of land directly from the landowners at a predetermined price, after which it would undertake master planning and then sell or develop the land. But this caused a lot of litigations. DDA finally notified the policy in May of 2015, but has been since waiting for Delhi government's clearance to implement it. Totally 4 zones have been approved for land pooling, potentially which could bring in 47,000 hectares of land for the construction of affordable housing and all the infrastructure around it. Now, what are some of the roadblocks? AAP government was to declare 89 villages as urban villages and 95 as development area. And it's simply not doing so. The AAP government wants DDA to hand over 10% of this land from DDA's share of land free of cost for projects. Now, Delhi Chief Minister Kejriwal has said that state government requires land for infrastructure projects, schools, hospitals, bus depots. DDA officials say the demand can't be met. Urban Development Ministry has already announced the Delhi government will be given land for hospitals, schools, night shelters for 1 rupee per annum, and it says that it's already done its job. Okay, so this is just a background. I think I'm going to first ask Mr. Bidhuri here. Mr. Bidhuri, आप बीजेपी से हैं, आप कह रहे हैं कि हमने तो सब कुछ कर दिया है, तो आप गवर्नमेंट को किसी भी तरह की ऑपोजिशन होनी ही नहीं चाहिए लैंड पूलिंग पॉलिसी को नोटिफाई करने के लिए। जो उनके कंसर्न है कि आप उन्हें 10% लैंड दे दे डेवलप करने के लिए, आप उस पर सहमत क्यों नहीं हैं?
देखो, पब्लिक वेलफेयर के लिए पब्लिक की जो बेसिक डिमांड्स हैं
जी,
सोशल, उसके लिए हमेशा से डीडीए गवर्नमेंट लैंड देती रही है स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को। ऐसा कोई नई बात नहीं है, जहाँ पर स्कूल की ज़रूरत होगी डीडीए देगी वो ज़मीन भी। लेकिन केजरीवाल साहब अभी चुनाव के कारण से दिल्ली को धकेल रहे हैं नरक के अंदर। वो जो ये डिमांड रख रहे हैं, 1.5 साल पहले ये लैंड पूलिंग पॉलिसी डीडीए ने पास की है। 35 साल में केवल 4 लाख डीडीए मकान बना पाया था, और लैंड पूलिंग एक्ट जो लाई गई है गवर्नमेंट, उसके कारण से डेवलपर को भी और जो किसानों के प्रति 1961 से आज तक कभी कोई चेंज ही नहीं किया गया लॉ में दिल्ली लैंड फॉर्मेट के अंदर, वो पहली बार 61 के बाद और अब हो रहा है 50-55 साल के अंदर, तो पहली सरकारें क्या करती रही मैं इसमें नहीं जाना चाहूँगा। लेकिन मैं केजरीवाल साहब से पूछना चाहता हूँ, वो बार बार इस बात को कहते हैं कि मुझे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट काम नहीं करने दे रही है। एक आदर्श गांव मैंने वो लिया हुआ है, टेक ओवर किया हुआ है, उसमें रूरल गांव है, दिल्ली ग्राम सभा की ज़मीन है, उनके चीफ मिनिस्टर सिसोदिया, डिप्टी सीएम सिसोदिया साहब कहते हैं कि डीडीए से लैंड ले लो वहाँ डेवलपमेंट के लिए, जब अर्बनाइज विलेज ही नहीं है। तो वो एक छिछोरी पॉलिटिक्स कर रहे हैं और इसलिए उनको ये नौटंकी करनी है। डीडीए की जो ज़मीन है वो भी सरकार की है, और जो लैंड पूलिंग एक्ट के अंदर लैंडलॉर्डों से ज़मीन ली जाएगी, उसमें एक्ट के अंदर प्रोविज़न है कि अगर 20 एकड़ से अब 20 हेक्टेयर से अब लैंडलॉर्ड की लैंड होगी तो उसको उसका मालिकाना हक दिया जाएगा 20%, और अगर 20 से कम है, 0 to 20 हेक्टेयर्स के है, तो उसको 40% का उसको गवर्नमेंट को दिया जाएगा, 60% उसके बाद जमीन रखी जाएगी। और जो गवर्नमेंट ने डेवलपमेंट करना है डीडीए ने, उसमें सारी बेसिक एमिनिटी जो प्रोवाइड करानी है उसी लैंड के अंदर करानी है। और केजरीवाल साहब दिल्ली का विकास कराना चाहते हो तो दिल्ली का तो रेवेन्यू भी उसमें अर्न होगा, रजिस्ट्री होगी अगर, तो 50 से 70-80 करोड़ रुपया दिल्ली को रेवेन्यू मिलेगा हर साल। तो पता नहीं उनकी क्या सोच है।
सर्कल रेट तो बढ़ चुके हैं, एंड आई थिंक द दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट हैज ऑलरेडी अर्नड एक्स्ट्रा रेवेन्यू ऑन दोज लैंड्स। ओके, आई एम गोइंग टू कम टू यू प्रोफेसर चिनॉय। व्हाट आर द बिगेस्ट कंसर्न्स ऑफ AAP? I mean, you might not be with the party right now, drifted away, but you were very clearly aware of what their objections were. What are their objections?
And by the way, I'm still sympathetic to them.
I'm glad.
See, number one, I think there is a bit of an ideological or political question here, which is why Biduri Saab and Aam Aadmi would not agree with each other. Because Aam Aadmi's argument is that the people who are relatively poor, and they are in the villages, they are in the outlying areas of the urban pool, that these people should get as much compensation as the land is worth. Though we know now, and the other guests know better, that land values have plummeted. That is a problem. But his concern is with that, and his concern is also with the social sector, with schools, with hospitals, etc. He wants to do that because the Aam Aadmi Party is a populist party. It does want to deal with the poor. It wants to deal with the lower middle class. So actually, they're looking at it from two different angles. Mr. Biduri and others are saying, listen, we must use this land. Aam Aadmi Party is saying, but what about the people who can't afford to replace this land with something as good as, for example, a DDA flat? And this is where it's got stuck. I wouldn't use this colorful language. I'd say there are two different ways of looking at it. And I really think a lot could be solved if there was a general meeting between all these organizations, all the political parties in Delhi, given all the data, and they work out a compromise. Okay, this land will be reserved for the social sector, this land will be available for housing, and this will be the compensation rate we will give, irrespective of what the rate is now, if it corresponds to the real rate, say 5 years ago or so forth. It's actually because they're not looking at the nitty-gritty and at figures, they are trading epithets and and accusations at each other. So you're not really having a scientific debate.
Ramesh Menon, do you think that it's the lack of a scientific debate? I mean, obviously Professor Chenoy has very, very articulately put forth AAP's ideological position, but we've heard AAP leaders actually turn around and say this is not for the people, this is for the developers. And when they talk about getting 10% of that allocated land from DDA for schools, hospitals, what I see of it or understand, there's already provision for creating schools and hospitals and social and physical infrastructure, isn't it?
See, while on the one hand I agree with Professor Chenoy, but then the fact of the matter is that everybody is debating it on a very academic level. Land pooling is no longer an academic exercise. Various lot of notifications have already been put into it's law now. So my personal guess is that there is a fair lack of knowledge or understanding on bit of the Delhi government about how the process of urbanization takes place. It is not that the Delhi government has to give away land to a DDA or DDA is usurping the land from the farmers and taking it away. The fact of the matter is when DDA does the master planning, then they get down to the local area planning and the sectoral plans. when the sectoral plans are done, apportions are made for social sector, whether it is schools, hospitals, etc. Now, the norms of urbanization globally pretty much remain the same, plus or minus 5%. So, if let's say in a sector of 500 acres, it is supposed to have a density of or a habitation of let's say 100,000 people, it will have provisions for so many number of hospital beds for which land has to be allotted. Now, there is a circular very clearly defining from the LG which says land transferred from one government department to the other would be either free of cost or 1 rupee or a notional value.
Right.
So, how can the DDA today say, without making the sectoral plans, that I am giving you that 10% or this 8%? Knowing the process of urbanization, I understand that the legitimate demand of Delhi government would be met. Now, it is only the politics which holds both these parties to sit together and find a way out. Otherwise, it is a non-issue which is being used against each other for political gains. Having said that, both would lose. The politicians on your panel would definitely endorse this fact that the people in the rural areas do not appreciate this posturing.
Absolutely. I am actually looking, and the research I've done is that if it's social infrastructure, schools, hospitals for which AAP wants land, that's going to be part of the plan. I mean, you cannot create residential locations without having or having space for both physical and social infrastructure. Ramesh, as you've said, Mr. Jain, come in here and say, I mean, political posturing, but Delhi is really suffering in this whole process. How do you resolve it? I mean, in many cases, you would have political parties arriving at least a center path. Here, they seem to be completely anti each other.
No, I am completely, confused and worried why the things are not moving forward. Because it's not 10% of the land which Delhi government requires, it's almost 50% of the land which Delhi government has to initiate and take up for development. Out of 5 subsidies, covering 66,000 hectare of the land, about 10,000 hectare of the land is earmarked for utilities, water bodies, etc. 10,000 hectares have been earmarked for solid waste management and greens, and 11,000 hectares goes for green belt, and excluding the built up areas of the villages, etc. we have to develop 27,600 hectare of the area, out of which about 3,400 hectare will go for the major roads, 30 meter and above, what we call master plan roads, which are to be done by the PWD. And these will cover 600 kilometer length. And unless the roads are there is no fun in land pooling, because all the services, water supply, electric supply, sewerage, sanitation.
Mr. Jain, you're saying that there is really no reason to actually oppose this land pooling policy and the way it's been notified in its current form. Are you on that side of the debate?
In fact, zonal plans have also been notified. The land pooling policy has been notified. There may be some small amendments which may be required with the experience. That can always be done later on. But we have to get going. We have to start with the infrastructure services.
I think we have to get going. I think Mr. Jain, you've said we have to get going. Let's get Prashant Solomon here. Prashant, there was so much excitement. We've had so many discussions before 2015, where we said, guess what? All the surrounding markets of Delhi are likely to face intense pressure. Look what's happening. Land pooling policy has been notified. There's so much land, so much affordable housing which will get created in Delhi that people are going to stop migrating to Gurgaon and Noida. All of it stalled today. So all of you developers who are actually developing in Dwarka Expressway and Gurgaon should be a happy lot.
Well, I don't agree, Manisha, because I think the larger interest that everybody has is in the development of the country, and it doesn't matter whether we're developing in Gurgaon or Noida. We're
I was just pulling your leg, Prashant. Don't be so serious.
No. But you know, honestly, Manisha, I think this has to be looked at in a very holistic way. As you were saying earlier, you were talking about it's not just housing, but it's also schools, it's also hospitals. I think you have to look at it in a broader way. It's actually complete real estate, which is not just residential and institutional. You have to have commercial areas. You see, how many commercial areas do we have today in Delhi? We have a few, Bikaji Kama Place, Nehru Place. We sorely lack commercial infrastructure, office infrastructure. Look at the kind of job generation. If we're talking about job creation, imagine if Delhi is developed, imagine how many jobs are going to be created just to build those new houses.
Absolutely.
The kind of offices that will come in, infrastructure that will come in. And I think people in Delhi are now, to be very honest with you, I think we want actual action now. I think it's time that we have to,
get some action.
Get some kind of thing actually on the ground, and people have to resolve their differences.
Professor Shenoy, I'm really, really surprised. There's revenue to be made for the Delhi government. I know that Arvind Kejriwal is talking and bringing in some of his top batchmates at IIT and saying, I want to make Delhi the hub of startups. I want to bring offices, top Fortune 500 companies back to Delhi. So there is a complete mismatch between the position that AAP is taking on land pooling policy and its larger vision for Delhi. And therefore, I'm not able to understand in this particular instance why AAP is not going ahead and notifying. Really, I mean, you said there's an ideological difference, but not able to grasp it.
Well, look, as Mr. Solomon has pointed out, even in commercial areas, malls and other things are missing. They bring jobs. So what actually AAP is trying to do is both satisfy the semi-rural population, which wants better conditions, including roads, etc. We know what happened in Gurgaon this monsoon, and simultaneously create more jobs because of these big commercial centers, industrial centers, all of that.
And not notifying land pooling
because
policy,
there has to be an agreement.
No,
but there must be an agreement on exactly where what is situated. It's not only the dimensions of the area, but the placement of the area, how close it is to social utilities, etc. I don't think this is an insuperable problem. I think if
it's
the rhetoric,
like an insuperable problem.
It's the rhetoric between the Delhi government and the Lieutenant Governor, which if both take a holiday for 3 months from the rhetoric, I think it can be solved. It's not an insuperable problem. And there are people who want houses. It's not that there are not people who want houses.
चलिए बिदूरी साहब आप बताइए ऐसा लग रहा है क्योंकि माहौल ही इतना खराब हो चुका है लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल और मिस्टर केजरीवाल के बीच में कि ये बेचारी लैंड पूलिंग पॉलिसी को कौन देखेगा अगर चाहते तो आप इसको भी कोर्ट में ले जा सकते थे वो बहुत सारी चीजें हाई कोर्ट में ले जा चुके हैं
ये हाई कोर्ट में ले जाने की जरूरत नहीं थी और ऑनरेबल लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर का इसमें कोई लेने देने है नहीं ये अर्बन डेवलपमेंट मिनिस्ट्री ने प्लान बनाया है डीडी ने प्लान बनाया है और अर्बन डेवलपमेंट मिनिस्ट्री ने जो प्लान बनाया है इसमें जो 40% लैंड डीडीए के पास रहेगी उसमें मॉल्स का भी प्रोविज़न होगा उसमें कमर्शियल बिल्डिंग का भी प्रोविज़न होगा उसमें स्कूल का भी प्रोविज़न होगा और उसमें जो डेवलपर डेवलप चीज़ को करेंगे तो यू नो बेटर देन हर चीज़ जो आजकल पीपीपी मॉडल की तरफ जा रही है सरकार के हटने के बाद तो जो डेवलपर होंगे उस डेवलपर के साथ में एक कंडीशन होगी और केजरीवाल साहब को मैं बताना चाहता हूँ वो 89 विलेजेस को अगर अर्बनाइज कर देंगे तो विलेज अर्बनाइज होने के बाद वो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के अंडर आ जाता है डीडीए के अंडर फॉर्मर कमिश्नर साहब बैठे हुए ही नोज बेटर देन मी कि वो उसके बाद उसकी जो रिस्पांसिबिलिटी बन जाती है डेवलपमेंट करने की वो डीडीए की अर्बन डेवलपमेंट मिनिस्ट्री की बन जाती है तो केजरीवाल मिसगाइड करना चाहते हैं पुअर पीपल्स को कि मैं स्कूल के लिए ज़मीन चाहता हूं मैं हॉस्पिटल के लिए ज़मीन चाहता हूं जब वहां पर फ्लैट मैंने पहले बताया 5-4 लाख फ्लैट बने 35 साल के अंदर और 5 लाख लोग प्रति वर्ष दिल्ली में नए आ जाते हैं बाहर से उसी से डेवलप हो रही है अनऑथराइज कॉलोनियां और जिससे भी जैसे इन्होंने बताया गुड़गांव में जंग पड़ गया बरसात हो गई तो जाम लग गया है तो जो प्रॉपर वे में अगर सिटी का प्लान नहीं बनेगा उसकी पानी की निकासी कहां से होगी तो इसी प्रकार से वो जंग बनेगा जी सारा का सारा तो केजरीवाल साहब इसको फंसा कर रखना चाहते हैं, ना मैं कुछ करूंगा ना कुछ करने दूंगा, तो वो टोटल पॉलिटिक्स कर रहे हैं। इसमें एलजी का क्या लेने देना है? उसमें जो डीडीए ने प्लान बनाया है, सब चीज पहले क्लियर कर दी, कितनी लैंड किसको आएगी। मैंने पहले बताया 20 एकड़ से ज्यादा जमीन होगी, लैंडलॉर्ड के पास 20% वेलफेयर के लिए वो देगा, उसमें से 20 एकड़ तक होगी, 40% वेलफेयर के लिए देगा वो उसमें से, तो चीजें बच, उसमें स्कूल का प्रोविजन होगा और गवर्नमेंट स्कूल के लिए गवर्नमेंट अलॉट करेगी डीडीए, वो लैंड डीडीए के पास होगी। और ये जो डेवलपमेंट करेगा डीडीए नहीं करेगा। डीडीए कहां से 10% जमीन देगा? वो तो लैंडलॉर्ड की जमीन है, जो 50,000 एकड़ जमीन लैंड पूलिंग में दी जा रही है, प्रोविजन में ली गई है, वो तो प्राइवेट लोगों की जमीन है। डीडीए 10% कहां से दे देगा? वो कैसी डिमांडें कर रहे हैं?
चलिए, तो मेरा तो बस यही कहना है कि मैंने अपने एक्साइटमेंट में बेचारे लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर को लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल बोल दिया, लेकिन आई थिंक ऑन दैट करेक्शन let me actually throw this question to Ramesh Menon. Ramesh, already I see that circle rates have gone up, lands in all the notified zones, land prices have started rising up, and my biggest worry is that by this, by the time this fight is resolved, and if at all it happens within this let's say tenure of both the governments, housing itself will become unaffordable. Or do you think that's not a concern?
Manisha, two quick facts. A, the prices have not gone up. Today, the farmer or the landowner is not getting the right valuation that he should get for his land.
Okay.
The factor number one.
Okay.
Two, there is this inevitability about this land pooling policy. There is no way that any government or any elected, government of Delhi, for political gains, I am not getting into the justifications of it, for short-term, mid-term, long-term political gains can stop this. This has to happen. If not, then you would push Delhi almost 30 to 40 years back, because all those large investors who have land, they always have to find an exit. Or even the farmers, if you see how Delhi has evolved, sadly, outside couple of countries across the world, we are the only capital of any country which has more than 5,000 unauthorized colonies. And we are now post facto saying, oh, let us work around the benefit or integration of these unauthorized colonies with mainstream. That is not how urbanization works. Yeah. Urbanization, the planning precedes the execution. And this 89 villages, 95 villages, this has nothing to do with planning. Planning is done by DDA. It is notified. Now the Delhi government has to just, pass, it's a procedural thing in the assembly where they allow DDA to enumerate these 89 or 95 villages, urbanizable villages, and start the process of land pooling. Mind you, the land pooling, the process itself will take anywhere from 18 to 24 months. So it is not that tomorrow morning it's going to happen. So the challenge for the Delhi government and DDA is to ensure that 5,000 unauthorized does not become 9,000. A. B. There should not be a social unrest, revolt, because the yield from farmland is paltry. I also hold some land, but it's kind of those numbers don't even justify the value that is stagnant and invested. And the last back of the envelope calculation somebody said on one of your shows was $60 billion of additional GDP in Delhi. An elected government cannot ignore that kind of numbers.
All right. So, I'm just wondering, both should be at the same side of the, there should be no negotiations. It's a win-win situation for everybody, including the people of Delhi. I'm going to wrap out here, gentlemen, but I just want to, for our viewers, sum up what our panelists have said and what is at stake here if the land pooling policy is not notified by the Delhi government. There are reports which says that corporate houses, developers, individual buyers may have spent close to 30,000 crores on buying land from farmers in the past few years, hoping for land pooling policy to be notified and the Delhi plan to actually take off. Now, out of 75,000 acres in 7 demarcated zones, about 25 to 30% is taken. There are also estimates which say that 1,000 crore have been collected by many developers who have illegally pre-launched housing projects under land pooling policy targeted at unsuspecting buyers without any formal sanctions and approval. So these buyers are already stuck. The potential of revenue we've already discussed is 50,000 crore rupees to the Delhi government. So really, there's such a win-win for even the AAP government. And if you look at circle rates, they've also gone up, at least in some areas, though Ramesh says that actually farmers are still not getting their due. You could actually leave it for a longer time and you might see price escalation, which is not good for affordable housing. That's another big thing that we need to know. What are the areas in which houses can come up? In North Delhi's Narela, Burari, Bhagatpur, northwest extension of Rohini, Kanjwala, Sultanpur. So there are just amazing areas which will open up land parcels, not just for home buyers and developers. Farmers also, as Ramesh pointed out, are demanding the notification simply because they also see huge benefit in terms of the value that they will realize and the potential this policy actually has to create jobs. Okay, we're going to wrap out here and thank all our panelists, Mr. Biduri, Mr. Jain, Ramesh Menon, Prashant Solomon and Professor Chinoy. Thank you very much for joining me. On the other side, we've really not taken a look at a very, very important angle, DDA itself. Now, does DDA have the capacity to continue to function the way it does and have ambitious plans for the future of Delhi? We'll come back and look at that.